Hello there, I'm David Warton. I'm here to tell you about the Mvabund package. Mvabund stands for multivariate abundances, and this is a new package for multivariate testing of hypotheses in ecology. The main thing that's different about this software compared to things that people currently use is that it's all about models. You specify and fit statistical models to your data and use those to test hypotheses. So we're looking at the effect of crab disturbance on invertebrate assemblages, for example. There's 4 sites, and at each site there's 2 transects that have crabs excluded using cages and 2 control transects. In each of these transects we record what species occur there and in what numbers, and we store them in a big matrix. Transects go in different rows of the matrix and species go in different columns. So we'd like to use this matrix to answer questions like, is there an effect of crab disturbance on the invertebrate assemblage? And if there is an effect, what is it? So is there an interaction with sites? In which species is there an effect? Does abundance increase or decrease in species? So these are sort of secondary questions we might be interested in once we know that there is an effect. So you might be thinking, well, why can't I use Primer or PCORD or Konoko, one of these other packages, and the methods therein? Well, it's 2 reasons. Firstly, these methods were designed primarily to say, is there an effect? But they're not very good at telling us what the effect is. Secondly, they're a bit like Rick Astley. Sounded pretty good in the 80s, but nowadays there's some better things we could be doing with our time, I think. So strictly speaking, all those methods weren't developed in the 80s, and there was actually a pretty continuous sort of development of methods in multivariate analysis since the 80s, but they're all based on a very 1980s idea, and that's that computers used to look like this in the 80s, they used to work like this, so if we were going to use them to do multivariate analysis, we need to take shortcuts. A common shortcut is to use a distance-based approach, to say, well, we've got lots of variables and we don't know how to model all these variables at once, so we'll calculate some pairwise dissimilarity across sites, and that's a shortcut which in effect compresses all our data from all our different species into just a single measure, so we can then use univariate methods. So that's what people do, that's the shortcut. What's wrong with it? Here we've got a graph of the power of the y-axis in situations where there's one species in which we have an effect, a treatment effect. We're going to change the variance of this effect species and see what happens. An ideal test would have pretty high power no matter what the variance of our effect species was. Let's see how Hermanova goes. It does disastrously badly. It has almost no power to detect a species in which there is a strong treatment effect unless that species has high variance. And it's not just Hermanova, it has this problem, canonical correspondence analysis, RDA, ANASIM, MRPP, you name it. They've all got this same issue, that they're just focusing on the species which have high variance and ignoring the rest. Hence they have no power to detect patterns in anything other than the most variable species. If you transform your data, that can deal with the problem a little bit, but it still doesn't fix the problem. You've still got some quite poor power properties of your tests. So what's going on? You would have learned in first year stats that when you're analysing data, you need to look at the data and you need to think about the properties of your data. We haven't been. So let's start talking about properties of multivariate abundance data. That's what I like to call this type of data, because each of these 2 terms implies a particular property. The multivariate property is that we've got lots of correlated variables, and these are the abundances across the different species. There are many correlated variables. The second property, the abundance property, is that we've got a mean variance relationship, and it's typically a very strong mean variance relationship because of the rare species, because of all the zeros in that you tend to see in the data. That infers a strong mean variance relationship. So I'll just show you a couple of pictures to illustrate this. Here is the crab disturbance data set. We've got sample variance against sample mean for all the species observed in the different sites. And as the mean abundance increases, the variance of abundance increases quite dramatically. In fact, there's a 100,000-fold range in variances across the different species and sites. That's huge. And if your analysis isn't taking that into account, it's going to have some pretty poor properties. And if you're analysing presence-absence data, don't feel like this gets you off the hook. Presence-absence data also has a strong mean-variance relationship that we should be accounting for in analysis. If you're interested in looking at mean-variance plots for your data, the Mvabund package, it's got this function mean_var.plot, which makes it easy to do. Okay, so what does Mvabund and friends do about these key data properties? Well, the multivariate property it handles through resampling, most commonly permutation tests, but bootstrapping rows of the data works as well. What do these methods do about the abundance property? What does Mvabund, the new package, do about these properties? Well, it handles the multivariate property the same way using resampling. We've incorporated a whole bunch of different methods of resampling into the software. There's permutation testing, there's bootstrapping. My personal favourite is to use Monte Carlo testing to sample from the fitted model and use that as a basis for inference. And you can choose which method you use through the resamp argument in our functions. How does it handle the mean variance relationship? Well, we fit generalised linear models. You've probably heard of these before. It's basically the simplest method around for handling mean variance relationships. So GLMs in 5 seconds, take linear regression, something you've seen in first year, add a mean variance assumption, you've got a GLM. That's pretty much all there is to it. So we fit GLMs to each species, and we use extensions based on generalised estimating equations to construct multivariate statistics. These statistics include a broad class of different types of statistic, and you can think of some, you would actually know of some special cases, things like Wilks lambda, a classical multivariate statistic, or the sum of F statistic has seen a bit of use in ecology. These are special cases, and so you can think of what we've done as take some of these statistics and extend them so they can be used when you've got lots of variables and when you've got a mean variance relationship. So that's a complicated bit. Now for the good news, it's really easy to use. If you know how to use the GLM function on R, just stick a many on the front to use many GLM instead. And then all your regular things that you can do to GLMs, the ANOVA function, summary, plot, predicts, they all work. The main workhorse is the ANOVA function. That is the one that tests hypotheses if you want to test for an interaction effect or a treatment effect. So what are the advantages of Mvabund? Well, I think there's lots, but I'll just highlight 2 for you. Firstly, better power properties. Remember this terrible power curve for Permanova and friends? This is how Mvabund goes. It tends to have higher power across a broader range of alternatives, and that's what we want in multivariate analysis. We may not get a statistic which is always going to have the highest power all the time, but what we do have is a statistic which has pretty good power across a broad range of alternatives. That's what we want. Okay, the second key advantage I'd say of using this approach is that we can check if we're on the right track. We can use our data to check if we're doing the right thing. And I think that's quite important because every data set is different. Every data set has different properties, and you don't want to just analyse your data on faith, thinking, well, so-and-so did this, so it'll work for me. You need to check that what you're doing is the right thing for your data set. And that's quite easy to do in a model-based framework. We've got a model, we've got assumptions, we can check them using the plot function here, produces a residual versus fits plot. And we're looking for no pattern. There's more or less no pattern there, which suggests that the method we used for analysis, negative binomial regression, is working pretty well for us. A couple more things to know about this package. The example we used has count data, but it works for other stuff as well, not just counts. Pretty much any measure of abundance you've got, you can use this package for. And secondly, don't think of it as a static package. We're constantly working on it, and a couple of things we plan to do in 2012 are to incorporate compositional effects and species traits into analyses. So that's going to be lots of fun. So stop dancing with your data, 80s style people, and get with the program.